and welcome to the Microsoft Spotlight podcast with me, John Jarvis, and my co-host, Andrew Moran. Andrew, please introduce today's guest.
So I'd like to welcome our next guest from Microsoft Corp today. She's actually on maternity leave, so I'm very happy she's joined us. It's Anne Michels. Would you like to introduce them, please?
Hello, so nice to be on the show. Thank you for having me.
No problem.
It's perfect. I'm very grateful that you've obviously took time out of your maternity leave and looking after your little ones. Obviously, come and speak to us today.
How old is the little one now?
Oh, I got two little ones. One is 2 years and 4 months old, and the second one is still a little bit more brand new. She is 4 months old.
Oh, congratulations! So
Thank
the March baby, like myself.
Yeah, March baby. It's actually funny because Tori, like the older one, she was born on March 7. And Emma, the younger one, she was born on March 4. And so we were keeping our fingers crossed, hopefully not the same date. And luckily it worked out.
That's an expensive payday at the end of February. Yeah, similar to us. Like my son was born at the end of April, and we got so many birthdays in April already. It was like, please just go into May, so we can afford some birthday presents.
I hear you.
Anyway, Anne, would you like to give us kind of like a brief kind of background on you, kind of what you do at Microsoft, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to kind of like give a little bit of overview what I have been up to in the last couple of years. I've actually been in the tech industry, working in the tech industry for over 13 years now, which is kind of like crazy. And when you kind of like reflect on it, the time has just flown by. And I've spent actually most of my career at Microsoft. Over 11 years, I've been with Microsoft now. I originally started out in Microsoft Germany, and then made my way over to Microsoft Corporation and moved to Seattle to the US. And I currently lead product marketing for a product that hopefully everyone who's listening to the podcast knows and uses. If not, we'll change that with this podcast, of course. But I lead product marketing for Microsoft Teams for the areas collaboration, education, and also the free version of Microsoft Teams. And leading product marketing, that means, of course, our goal is really to drive usage of Microsoft Teams so that every organization around the world can take advantage of the product and to improve how they collaborate and how they communicate. And also for the people who are already using Microsoft Teams, we want to make sure that they get the most value out of Microsoft Teams so that they know the new features that we have launched, for example, and the new capabilities that are available in the product. And so I've actually been in product marketing now, or working in product marketing for quite some time. When I joined Microsoft first back in Germany, I first focused on a very different area. I worked in the area of student marketing. And so we focused actually on kind of like what we called it at that time, to really win the hearts and minds of student developers and IT pros. And so back in the days, some of the fun things that we did was to actually help students to write apps and create apps for Windows Phone. So that's how long I've been with Microsoft. Things have changed a lot. And now I said I lead product marketing for Microsoft Teams, which is such a fun job to do, because as many people probably know on this podcast, Teams has just grown at such an amazing speed over the last couple of years. And it is now a product that is being used by over 145 million people every single day. And I mean, I get to influence its product strategy and tell its story. And that is, of course, a lot of fun. So as you are probably already hearing, I love my job, and I can really only recommend to anybody, if you want to get into product marketing, you're not working in this area yet, it's a lot of fun to work in product marketing, because you really get to do a mix of a lot of things, right? It's not just that you work on storytelling, messaging, and positioning. That is, of course, one part. But then also, of course, you get to work very closely with customers. You get to go to a lot of events like Ignite and so on, right, where we always meet with the community. And you also get to work very closely with engineering. So we do a lot of customer research as well, making sure that we really understand our audience, and to think about our overall marketing strategy in addition to that, but then work together with engineering to make sure that the product really has meets the needs of our customers as well.
I'll say that's probably one of the best intros I've heard in a long time. It's so passionate. It's just like, he's just there just listening, you can just see all the passion in your face, just basically, he's just talking about teams.
I think if they cut you open, you'll bleed teams, I think.
Yeah. You've got purple blood, that's what it is.
Purple blood.
And I mean, obviously my background, I was a Skype for Business consultant for a long time. I say I was an MVP in Skype for Business. So moving into teams, was obviously that natural thing, and obviously being part of the Teams Elite program as well. At the very early stages, you could see, how the product was going to basically be positioned and how it's going to basically, change the world. I mean, obviously, I think because of COVID, it has been a horrible time for everyone around the globe. But for Microsoft's perspective, it's probably been one of the biggest things, and one of the best things that's come out of COVID is the usage of Teams and how it's basically opened up more doors and more avenues for the usage around the world. And because of people being forced to work from home, Teams has been that go-between, as well as like Zoom as well. So people just doing meetings outside of work with family members and stuff like that. Teams has been like a lifeline for a lot of people.
Yeah, no, and I think what you just said, right, it's so true. And we as a team, we have really felt that in the last 1.5 years, right? Because of course, COVID is like knock on wood, hopefully, we'll soon become out of it. I mean, we're still struggling in a lot of countries, no question. But a pandemic is, of course, nothing, right, that we ever expected, right? None of us, and we never have, of course, right? I mean, but it's so grateful. I'm so grateful to be able to work for a product that has really enabled people to continue to collaborate and communicate in those times, right? They're just not so many, what you just mentioned, right? A lot of people, they were forced to work from home. And if they hadn't had a product like Microsoft Teams, they wouldn't have been able to do that. But not just that, right? But also when we look at the education sector, all the schools, all the children that wouldn't have been able to continue to learn during the pandemic without Microsoft Teams. Or for example, there are a lot of examples as well. There's a hospital in Africa that all of a sudden the experts that they needed, they couldn't travel there anymore, and they couldn't get them the expertise that they needed to perform local surgeries. What did they do? They simply connected with the local expert from the other country. They connected with them over Teams. And that is, of course, something that is really right. That has brought me so much joy working on Teams over the last 1.5 years, because I know how helpful this product has been for people around the world.
I mean, I've mentioned before on this podcast, so during the whole COVID pandemic, that my stepdaughter basically started using Teams for school. And I had to basically teach her how to use Teams. And then they're watching her downstairs with a laptop, watching the teacher basically then doing a PE lesson through Teams. And so they're doing all that exercise and stuff. I was I'm sure that wasn't what Teams was designed for, but obviously, it's being used now in that way to, get around these challenges that, the world was having.
Yeah, and I think that is actually really important, right? Because when you design a product as a company, you of course have something in mind, right? And you do customer research and so on. But I think the products that really are most valuable to people are that adapt with the requirements and that adapt with the different needs that people have. And that's why I think Microsoft Teams has been also really been used by so many people over the world, because that's exactly what we did last year, right? When COVID started, we sat together with engineering, and engineering did a lot of research at that time. We've been continuing to do that, really talking closely to customers, because we said what we have been focusing on, all the capabilities that we've wanted to build into the product, should we focus on? Should we still prioritize them? Or are there other things that people need right now? And I think that is really something that for me has been standing out when I look at Microsoft Teams. Because, for example, now as we are going, or a lot of companies, a lot of countries are going back to a hybrid work model. Now, also in Teams, we have asked ourselves, what are features, what are capabilities that we need to bring into the product to enable that new world of hybrid work? And of course, that is not something that we had planned for just a year ago, because nobody was thinking about hybrid work in the way how we're thinking about it now.
Yeah, I mean, I work for Fujitsu, and I read an article a couple of months ago basically about, in the Japanese culture, it was always basically bums on seats, always in the office, being the first one in, the last one out. And literally, they're now basically completely flipped on its head, and basically everyone's now going to be working from home. They're going to be closing offices down in Japan. And obviously using Teams is that, that way of doing things. It's just mad how, Teams has basically come out of, well, it didn't come out of nowhere, but it's basically a product that was built and obviously was designed to basically replace that Skype for Business and start including all the O365 stuff on top, and how it's just basically exploded because of COVID.
Yeah, it's just accelerated, hasn't it, over the past 12 months, 14 months. It'd be really interesting to kind of see the acceleration of that in percentages compared to like the second. I'm guessing it's the most like fastest growing product of all time. What's the second and what's the third, and see how far in front it is.
Yeah, I would say we of course always had kind of like a broader vision for Teams, right, and how to evolve it. But definitely when we look kind of like what has happened over the last 1.5 years, it's so great because we have also seen new ways. How can we bring really value to people through Teams, and what is the full potential of Teams? And I think that is so great about the product. What I also love about our engineering team, because they're so agile, right? They didn't say, hey, we have a set. And I think that is something that everybody who has worked in the tech industry for a longer time also really understands how that has changed over years, right? When we just think back kind of like only 10 years ago, right? I mean, a lot of products were still running on a 3-year cycle. You would have a new version of a product every 3 years. And between that, we would get some service packs and so on, right? But not really new features and capabilities. And now, of course, given that everything is in the cloud, we have so much more flexibility. And I think the pandemic has really shown why that is so important, right? Because we have, of course, always had that conversation with customers. And I'm sure you have had the same conversation as a consultant, right? Why should we bet on a product that is in the cloud, right? Why can't I just buy a product every 3 months and every 3 years and then I get a new version? But I think especially the last 1.5 years have shown how important it is that we can release new capabilities and new features and can update the product literally on a daily basis if we have to.
Yeah, I mean, cloud-based products are now the norm, and now on-premise products are now the one that makes everyone put their eye up and go, what are you doing?
Yeah.
I've got a question, John. So obviously we touched on the fact, obviously, you joined Microsoft now, is it 11 years ago? Am I right in thinking that you never actually planned to get into IT?
That is very true. I never planned to get into IT. When I was young,
was it by accident you got into IT? Because we've had that quite a lot in this podcast.
I think we've had that. This is episode 11. That's the 11th time we've heard it.
Oh, really? Okay. That's interesting. I think so. For me, it was absolutely by accident. When I was kind of like, when I finished high school, and then I got my master's degree. I studied media studies, which is kind of like a mix of PR and journalism, a little bit marketing in there as well. But I always wanted to go kind of like, I wanted to work for a newspaper. I wanted to work for a TV station. At some point, I wanted to become an actress, like all those things that you want to do. The one thing that I definitely did not want to do, there were 2 things, because my dad, he actually worked in IT. So he used to work for he first started out in Compaq, which was then bought by Digital, which was bought by Compaq and was then bought by HP. So he kind of like worked in different companies in the IT sector just because they were bought at some point. But I always like, right, because when he told me about his job, I was always, that's boring, right? But I will never realize the full bandwidth of jobs that you have in IT. But I think it was also simply something, right, that rebellious teenagers that you do when someone tells you something about their job, and especially your parents, it's the least thing that you want to do, right? And I was like, I will definitely do something completely different. But then it happened so that I actually, after I got my master's degree, I started working on the agency side. I worked in a special events agency. And at some point I was simply looking for a new job, and I was very open-minded, and I was just browsing around, and there was a job by Microsoft that was posted on an online platform. I was like, okay, I'll just give it a go. Well, and now more than 11 years later, I have never looked back.
I think it's quite funny because, like, as I said, the 11 people, that 11 of our guests beforehand have all said they got in by accident. But I think for me, I was always destined to work in IT. My parents tell me this story quite a bit. But at nursery, there was a computer at my nursery, and they remember me getting kicked off of it because I was hogging it and using it for like hours per day. And then they went down to the other end of the nursery. They found me at the other computer at the other side. So, like, computers and things, I think, has always been an interest in me. I've always liked technology, me. I mean,
even to the fact that I used to basically at like 2 years old used to get like the VCR, stick it into the actual tape player and watch Thomas the Tank and stuff like that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I've always messed with technology. I mean, I did put like pens and crayons in that little gap as well. Do you know what I mean? Just breaking it. But I've always had an interest in technology, and I think so me and John are similar.
I love it. But I think what you're hearing, right, because as you just said, you have interviewed quite a lot of women now that work in technology and that are quite successful in technology, right? But I think hearing that none of them had actually planned to get into technology and kind of like it happened, just like in my case, I think also shows a little bit of the generational changes that we're seeing now, right? Because when I was a girl, when I went to high school or just elementary school, there weren't any of those offers that we luckily, Laura, that we have now about like getting girls to code and so on, right? And to help really girls to get interested in this field. And when I was young, there was none of that. So I think I never considered it because there also wasn't the offer, because I think I would actually have enjoyed it. I think I would have loved doing it, right? I don't have that technical background. I didn't get a kind of like a degree in computer science, but I also never thought about it because it was never there at my fingertips or nobody ever asked me.
Yeah. I think what's quite interesting. Sorry, I think what's quite interesting is that in the next, I think, episode or two, we've got somebody who started in the IT business in the IT industry straight out of college, and done an internship and stuff there. So it's gonna and again, I think that's a generation we have, haven't we, Andrew? We have got somebody coming in.
Yeah, we have. Yeah, I mean,
he shook his head, and I was like, "Oh no, am I wrong?"
One of our future guests. I mean, I think she's probably one of the youngest guests we're going to have. She's basically started out from university, is now working as a consultant. I only noticed that via LinkedIn. Basically, she started posting videos talking about consultancy work that she's doing for a particular company that I know ran a user group in my local area. So as I do, I just basically reached out to her and asked if she was interested in joining us, and lo and behold, she's going to be on episode 13 or 14, I think. Yeah. So what's
going to be really interesting is I think it's a stigma from our generation and stuff that that women shouldn't be working in IT and it's a boy job. I'm really interested in school and universities. Is that still the case? And what's the most recent experience like? So I think kind of what you said off camera earlier was kind of like the role of mentors within the WIT network and within IT. Kind of, would you like to kind of expand on what you were saying earlier?
Yeah, absolutely. So what we were talking about earlier was like simply how do you get started as a woman in the technology industry, right? And I think what is so important, and actually what has helped me a lot in my career a lot, was to really connect with other women who are successful and who have a successful career in tech, and to learn from them and to get inspired by them, right? I love, for example, watching talks or just following people like Julia White, right? Who have really had a great career or who have a great career, actually. Julia White's career is far from over, but who have a great career in tech and that really show you and they talk about their experience and share their experience, right? So that is something that I would really encourage everyone, if you are considering or thinking about going into the tech industry, just open your eyes and go get on social media. That's a nice thing that we have social media now today, because there are a lot of examples of successful women in the tech industry, and it's absolutely possible to have a great career as a woman. There's no question, right, from that perspective. But I think what has also helped me most was then really to connect with these people personally and to find mentors who kind of like guide me through the questions that I might have. And what I have seen with a lot of people that I mentor also as well, I had someone reach out to me on LinkedIn a couple of months ago, and super great. She also works as a consultant, and she sent me this long message, and she almost apologized, asking me to be her mentor. Right. And so that was my first coaching to her. Do never apologize for asking somebody to be your mentor, right? First of all, it's an honor if somebody asks you to be your mentor, right? So that's kind of like how you should think about it as well. But it's so interesting because a lot of people, they approach me and they say, hey, I'm not sure if I should have asked you or if I should ask you. I was kind of afraid of what you might say. Don't be afraid. people like us, people, I mean, you and Andrew and John, it's probably the same for you. Is everybody who's active in the community, we love mentoring. We love helping young talent thrive and grow in the tech industry. And it is something, you know, like if you ask somebody, they can only say no, but they will likely not say no because they don't want to do it. But maybe at that moment, they might not have the time, the capacity to mentor you. But that is really a big, big advice that I want to give to everybody. Don't be afraid of asking people to mentor you. A lot of us, the majority of people that I know who work in tech, love helping young talent grow. And so just go ahead, go for it, and ask the person who you think could be a good mentor for you if they want to be your mentor.
So one of our previous guests basically mentioned that she looks up to you as a person within the tech community. Karina Linz, she's also based in Germany. And she said, like, you know, there's a lot of women out there, you know, who other women look up to, don't have the confidence to ask the question about being mentored. But one of the biggest things I want to point out, just because it's the tech industry, you don't have to be technical. Obviously, you know, you're not in a technical role within a massive technical organization. So, you know, there's opportunities and roles for women out there within Microsoft or Google or Apple or whatever the tech industry they want to go into, that, you know, they can have a successful career.
Yeah, that is a good point. I would add one thing to that. On the one hand, of course, there are tons of roles, right? I mean, if you work in HR in the tech industry or work in the legal department and so on, you don't have to have a technical background. But I also want to encourage everyone, if you are not sure if the tech industry is the right industry for you because you're kind of interested in tech, but you might be a little bit scared by, you know, like the knowledge other people have in the tech industry, don't let that stop you. As said, I do not have a technical background. When I joined Microsoft, I was a user, right? I was using Windows and Word and so on, you know, but I discovered my passion for tech. I love going deep now, right? I led product marketing for the Microsoft Teams Admin Center a couple of years ago. And that's when I really started to connect with the IT Pro community. And I started to give presentations on our security and compliance capabilities. And all of a sudden, someone asked me, can you do a demo of PowerShell? And my first, literally, I was like, what's PowerShell? Right? But those are things, but then I dove into it. And I gave a presentation. And PowerShell is an amazing tool. If you don't know about it, there are great YouTube videos about it as well. But it's like you have an opportunity to come into the tech industry, even not being a tech expert, and develop that knowledge. And that is something that I think is so important because we're all growing, we're all learning, right? Nobody who joined the tech industry 10 years ago has the same knowledge as now because simply the technology has evolved. And I think that is really important for people to understand. Even if you did not get a degree in computer science, you can still have a really great career in the tech industry and still get technical and get your hands on with the tech. And it's a lot of fun.
I say it's obviously opened a lot of doors for yourself. I mean, you've done something that, you know, I would like to achieve at some point in my career. I mean, I've done presentations at my own user groups and my own conferences, and it's been like 400, 500 people, but then you've basically stood up in front of Ignite in front of 5,000 people. So, I mean, that's something I would love to achieve in my career. But, I mean, obviously that's opened such a big door for you, and obviously then recognised by other women within the technical community, and obviously all these eyes on you. It must give you like a good feeling just basically thinking back, you know, you did that.
It's one of the career highlights when I kind of like think about my career, right? I mean, Ignite, every single Ignite is kind of like a career highlight for me just because I love Ignite as a conference so much. But being part of the Microsoft Teams keynote and demoing Microsoft Teams in front of 5,000 attendees, that was just simply, right? You kind of like, you step on the stage and you're like, wow, this is just one of those moments, right, that you truly enjoy, and that is definitely something that was a lot of fun. So I'll keep my fingers crossed for you, Andrew. I'm sure you can make it happen.
I mean, one of my career highlights, or one of them, is attending Ignite. So I can so I can only imagine the buzz and the thrill of being able to present in front of 5,000 people, plus like 5,000 people there, but also all the people around the world and YouTube and stuff after that as well. So yeah, unbelievable.
So I want to touch on obviously something that obviously this podcast is all about is obviously the WIT network, so the Women in Technology Network. I know you're very passionate and have a strong belief in diversity and representation, and obviously doing a lot of work with working mothers since now you've become one yourself. I know basically in the notes that you basically sent to me, you didn't really have an appreciation until you become a mother of the challenges that people face. Do you want to talk a little bit about that and what you're doing? I remember you seeing posts you put on LinkedIn where you was obviously talking about maternity pay and things like that, and trying to be a force behind that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's absolutely a passion of mine, because I believe that diversity and representation matters, right? And I think we have a lot of great women in the tech industry, but we need more women in tech. And I think that's why I'm really so passionate about helping other women, especially those who are early in career and like trying to find their way to really pursue a successful career in the tech industry. And as you mentioned, one topic that I have become especially passionate about over the last 2.5 years is working mothers, because I have two girls myself. And since Tori was born, I've really been experiencing those challenges and also the joys that you have as a working mom working in the tech industry. And it is something, when I was pregnant, that I didn't hear a lot of people talk about. But I had a lot of questions, because I am someone who I truly love my job. And of course, I was asking myself, what will happen when I have kids? What will that mean for my career? And that is something that a lot of people who I talked to, including my managers, they couldn't necessarily give me a good answer to those questions. And it is simply something that I now, because I also coach a lot of other women who are either planning to have a family or who already have kids, right? They constantly always have that question every day. You're asking yourself, okay, how do I balance like having a full-time job, and how do I balance motherhood at the same time? Especially in a society where it's still not the norm and still not kind of like not always accepted that the woman actually goes back to work full time and really continues to focus on their career after having kids. And I think that is something that is so important for us to talk about, because we also need companies to really build the right infrastructure to enable women to have a successful career and have kids at the same time. Let's just take a look at the US, right? When we think about the US, the tech industry is actually kind of like is probably the industry that has the best infrastructure for working moms, because we have a good, like looking at Microsoft, right? I get over about 5 months of maternity leave, but there are other companies or other states in the US where you don't have a legal right. The legal right for maternity leave is only 2 weeks. And just think about that, right? How are you supposed to have a kid and then go back to work after 2 weeks, or even if it's 2 months, right? Who will take care of childcare? Who will watch your kid while you're at work? And depending on how much childcare costs, even if you have found a place where you can leave your child during the day, you might not be able to afford that. I had a friend in the US. She had to quit her job because she said childcare is more expensive for me than because my salary, I can't equal that out. So I make less than what I have to pay in childcare. So she had to step out of the workforce because she was forced, really, from that perspective. And now she's struggling to get back in because she has a gap on her resume of 5 years. And that is something I think that is often not talked about, but that research also shows is a really big problem. And there's research that shows that of highly qualified women, 43% of them take a career break or completely kind of like step out of the workforce at some time. Just think about it, 43%, right? Because we often talk about pipeline. We often talk about how do we get women into the tech industry, but we don't talk enough about how do we keep women in the tech industry and how do we enable women to have a successful career and a great family life at the same time. And I think that is really the key for us to keep women in the workforce in the long term.
So it resonates quite a lot with me because my partner basically took a career break of 5 years.
Yeah.
Because of obviously the role that me and John do. You're doing a lot of traveling up and down the country, staying away a lot. So the kids were a lot younger. So my daughter now is basically at secondary school and the lad is now in primary school. And we're now obviously looking at this 5 years now coming to an end. So she's now actually looking at going back to work and obviously how does that work for us and the challenges around that. Just to say, yeah, childcare is expensive. I mean, the fact you said, like, in some states in the US, you only get 2 weeks maternity break. I mean, if that woman had a C-section, it's going to take longer than 2 weeks to heal, just to be back to normal, to go back to work, at 100%. It's just such a, disconnect, across, obviously, the world, really. And obviously, supporting working women and obviously keeping them in the roles they're in.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what I have seen being really important in those experiences, right? Because when people go on maternity leave, as said, Microsoft is a great company and we have great benefits from that perspective. But there's still often people have challenges when they come back to work. And they have challenges in multiple ways, right? Because often a woman, when they come back, I've seen it that a woman has come back and they didn't really want to go back to work full time. They would have loved to work half time, but they were a little bit afraid, or they didn't know, how do I start that conversation with my manager? And that's why I believe that why managers play such an important role, such a crucial role in the experience that women have when they go on maternity leave. Because I, as a manager, I recently had someone on my team who was pregnant. So I did my very best to have those conversations proactively, right? I told her, hey, we will make work whatever you need when you come back from maternity leave. If you want to come back full time, you come back full time. If you want to come back for half time, we can make that happen. But that is not a conversation that always happens before you go on maternity leave. But yeah, I've also seen it go ahead.
So I think my wife's quite lucky in a way. She works for the NHS. And they're quite proactive in that. So my wife now works a part-time 4 days a week. It's not quite part-time, but not quite full-time. Like 3/4 time. But she works. But she got that opportunity as well, and I think it's something that's great within the NHS, and they're quite good about stuff like that.
I say with my partner, she works for the government, one of the government departments. And when she goes back to work, she's basically doing term time. So she'll only be at work during the normal time that the kids are at school. So when the kids have their holidays, their breaks, so the 6-week break in the UK and the half terms, she's actually not at work. So obviously that allows that flexibility then.
Yeah, I think, and also I think if the NHS can do that, I think that most companies can do that, because the NHS obviously are underfunded, and getting someone who should be on a full-time job into a 4-day role, that's a fifth of their obviously their workload down, but they don't have the money then to employ somebody else to kind of help out and stuff like that. So it's if the NHS can do it, I think big businesses with a big payroll should be kind of the people who are at the front of this initiative.
Yeah.
I mean, on this call, on this podcast, we basically spoke to obviously one of your colleagues, Laurie. So I know obviously she has kids herself, and obviously does a lot of travelling, especially with her role, obviously pre-COVID. And obviously one of the questions I asked her how she obviously handles that, and obviously having a supportive ex-partner and obviously the support of her family enabled her to continue doing the role where she's obviously traveling to Europe and doing all these conferences and presentations. I'm guessing you're going to have like similar, because the job role that you do as well, where you go out and do all these presentations. So obviously having that supportive family behind you obviously helps you, progress.
Yeah, you need to find your support network, right? I'm kind of like also lucky in that way. I have a very supportive husband. We really kind of like live that 50-50 parenting kind of like concept. And that is, of course, very important, because you can't do it on your own. And I think that is also important when you have children, that you need to have that conversation with your partner, right? To just simply discuss, hey, because normally both work full time before you have children, and then it's always the question, okay, how do we gonna make it happen once we have children and once both of us go back to work? And that is something that was really important for me, to have that conversation with my partner, but also, as I mentioned, to have that conversation with my manager, because in my case it was actually different. I wanted to go back to work full time. I mean, I love my children, no question, right? But I love my job, and I wanted to go back full time after maternity leave. And my manager, she assumed that I didn't want to do that, or she assumed that I didn't want to travel anymore that much. And so I had to kind of like really set the expectations with her, or really have a conversation with her, so that we can both agree, how will my work life look like when I come back to work? Because of course, before that, I was like traveling a lot more, like as much as Laurie. That's not what I want to do right now. But going to a conference once or twice a year, absolutely, because I want to connect with customers, right? I want to connect with the community. And that is just really important to like have that open conversation. And also to even what I've seen, it's important to stand up for other people in your organization that might be in the same situation. I had a situation last year. I was in a meeting where we were talking about an employee who had recently come back from maternity leave. And we were talking about a conference and who should be going to that conference. And her manager mentioned that he didn't want to put her up for the conference because she had just come back from maternity leave and she probably would not like to go.
Oscar.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That I asked.
I was about to say the same thing then, John.
I asked him, "Have you asked her?" And he hadn't. He had the best intentions, don't get me wrong, right? Because he wanted to do what was right for her. But she was like, oh, yes, please send me to a conference. That will be great. I get a little break from kind of like my crazy life right
A parent holiday, yeah.
With newborn, right? And so, but it's interesting because people assume something with the best intentions, that's it. But it's so important to have those open conversations and to really discuss with your manager, how do you want your life to look like, your work life when you come back from maternity leave?
Obviously, one of the challenges of having kids as well is obviously when they become ill and sick, because you literally have to like drop work, whether that's basically, and in normal cases, it normally falls on the woman to basically take that time off work to look after the child while obviously the male carries on working. So, there is that challenge there as well. I mean, thankfully,
my son's sick next door right now, but like both me and him are fortunately working from home today, so we're taking it in turns to kind of like tend to him and stuff like that. But yeah, it is tough, and I think it was tougher probably 10 years ago than what it is now, hopefully. But
especially with the capabilities of working from home now. I mean, obviously, if my son or daughter was ill, I can basically, still be at home working, doing what I need to do for my customers, while they're, curled up in a ball somewhere in their bedrooms watching TV.
Avengers.
Yeah. Look at, as long as you check on them and make sure they're okay, that's the main thing. But yeah, I think the world is obviously gearing up for that way. It's just, you still need to have that conversation with work, because some employers are not happy with you basically dropping at the drop of a hat to go and look after your child. So it's a conversation that has to be had.
Yeah.
So what's your usual working day then? Like, I know it's going to change, I guess, completely in when you do go back. But yeah, what was your usual working day?
If I showed you a picture of my calendar, you would be like, okay, meetings. That's which is interesting because before it was more like in-person meetings. Now it's just a lot of meetings on Microsoft Teams. I mean, we're now slowly going back to the office from their perspective, but I actually have a job that requires me to collaborate with a lot of people and communicate really with a lot of people. So I am in a lot of meetings. But I also always try to block off time on my calendar for multiple things. On the one hand, of course, just to catch up on things and to really work on projects on my own, to really have that kind of like that focus time. But what I also always try to do once a month at least is to really kind of like focus on career planning. And that is something that is always the thing that kind of like the block on your calendar that you sometimes delete when something kind of like comes up if I had will. But I think it's so important to kind of like reflect on, hey, how, where am I in my career? What have I achieved? What are my goals? Am I on the right path to achieve those goals? What are knowledges? What are skills that I need to build? And how can I do that in my current job? Or can I work with my manager, for example, to do some additional training in other areas and so on? And so, but yeah, that's not my kind of like my normal day is to meet with a lot of people. And actually, as said, since I work in product marketing, I really get to work across a lot of different groups in Microsoft.
Very good. I've got a question for you. So what is the future of your career at Microsoft? I mean, are you going to be one of these people that are lifers that basically stay there? Because we've had a few conversations with previous guests that don't see themselves leaving Microsoft. Are you planning to be there for as long as the ride carries on, as long as you're happy?
I can't fully answer that yet because I am actually one of those people, right? There are some people that have their career plan. They say in 5 years and 10 years, I want to be exactly that and do that and that. I am someone, I let myself drive by my passion and and the work that I enjoy. And that's how I have always found the next opportunities for me. And that has always been a great guide for me from a career perspective. It is true, I've been with Microsoft for a really long time now. And I don't think that I will spend my entire career at Microsoft, simply because I think I will become a better employee and a better leader if I also learn how other companies do things, right? Because there are, of course, certain things how we do them at Microsoft, which are great, but there are also things that we might not be doing in the perfect way, or there are ways how we can do it in a better way. And I think it is important for me at some point to simply kind of like step out of my comfort zone and to join another company, to learn what they are doing and to learn from their experiences and to get more best practices in a lot of areas so that I can become an even better leader from that perspective.
Would you say you've kind of already done that in a way by moving from location to location? Because obviously Microsoft in Germany is different to Seattle, Chicago, et cetera, et cetera.
I've definitely done it to a certain extent, yes. And I think that's also one of the reasons why I have been at Microsoft for such a long time. And also I've done very different things in my career at Microsoft. And that is also something that I always advise people on who work at Microsoft and who are thinking about their next step, right? You don't always have to go to another external company. You have so many options within Microsoft. I mean, Microsoft is literally like 20, 30 companies within one, right? And you can do so many different things at Microsoft. For example, right, you can work in gaming, you can work in advertising, you can work in on product marketing for a product like Teams. There's so many different options that you have from that perspective. And that is definitely one of the reasons that I have been with Microsoft for such a long time, because I have been able to move around in the company and get experience in different areas and learn different things.
I mean, I know an ex-friend who basically moved from Microsoft UK over to Seattle, and he works as a senior product marketing manager within the modern workspace area. I mean, I've always looked at, one day I would like to pick up a blue badge and join Microsoft, and it's just basically when I feel the time is right to basically do that. So I've had a look many times during my career within IT, like, I would like to join Microsoft at some point, but just at the minute, I'm not ready to, put myself in there.
I can tell you, it's a great company to work for.
There we go.
I'm
people as well.
I'm pretty much CDW through and through at the moment, so it's tough.
Well, you've been there quite a while though, John, haven't you?
Yeah, I've been here 7 years now, so yeah. I don't see it ending anytime soon. And if you love a company that you work for, and you've got what you want in your career, and you see progression, then sometimes the future is always home.
Yeah. I'd say it depends on the benefits you get through that company as well. I mean, I've been very grateful for the benefits I get through Fujitsu. So I mean, one thing's I
hope my manager's listening to that, by the way. That'd be cool.
So I was quite grateful for Fujitsu. I actually get private medical care for like me and my family, and that's part of my actual employment package. And I was really struggling with gallbladder issues last year. I was waiting on the NHS to get my appointment because of COVID happening. So my operation didn't happen, and then I had to basically go through private, and all that's basically covered through Fujitsu, which now, touch wood, I'm all good. I'm happy. But yeah, it just depends on the company you work for. I mean, some companies I've worked for in the past, you don't get the benefits that you get better elsewhere, but then also the grass isn't always greener.
Yeah, and sometimes those companies are great for one person, but not great for the other.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And not just a company, it can happen in a team, right? I mean, because you can, of course, work at Microsoft and you might just not get along with your manager, or you might just simply the type of work, it might just not be the right fit for you. And that's why I always really advise people, if you don't feel happy in your job, I see so many people just say, okay, I'll just wait. I'm sure it'll get better. Take action. Talk to other people and find out why you're not happy and what other options you have. And often, as you said, you might know a lot of people at Microsoft, myself including. I love the company. I've been working for the company for a long time. And I think it's always a sign when you see that there are so many people that have been with a company for such a long time. That really speaks for itself.
Yeah. So I've got obviously, we're getting close to time. I've got a couple of questions for you to kind of wrap up. So if someone's to basically approach you today from the WIT community, what advice would you give them about coming into the world of tech?
Definitely get engaged in the community. That is actually really the first advice I would give to people, because it is sometimes difficult when you start in an industry like tech. It can just be overwhelming. But what really makes the tech industry special is the community and the people that work in the tech industry. And that is really something that is also so great, or why it is so helpful to get engaged in the community right away. For example, right? Join a local user group or simply go to one of their meetings, or there are a lot of online opportunities right now, of course, to get engaged in the community as well. But also the community can really help you get started in a smooth way. They can really kind of like help you to jumpstart your career, because there will be things that you will need to learn. Absolutely, be prepared for that. But the community is always right. What I love about the community is that everybody in the community, we don't just all love to learn, we love to grow our knowledge, but we also love to pass it on. And that is something, when you come into tech, you might be struggling because there's something where you feel like everyone knows more than you do. But then you can find a buddy who can simply kind of like guide you through that. And that is definitely something that I think is important. Another thing is simply also be open-minded. Right? There will be moments working in tech where you will like, oh wow, this is an interesting industry. But you will see, if you're open-minded, if you connect with people, it's one of the best industries to work in.
And have you faced any challenges from obviously being quite a face in the community? Because I know we've basically spoke to one of our guests in episode 10, where she's basically had quite a few negative comments, because she streams .NET content on Twitch, and then basically she has moderators that basically look after all the inappropriate questions and things. Have you experienced anything like that in your time?
Not very often, but once in a while, there will be haters. Let me put it like that, right? I think that is something that, if you are a public kind of like figure, if your face is out there, that will always happen, right? For example, you give a presentation at Ignite, and of course we always look at the ratings because we want to improve, we want to do things better. I give presentations for the people, for the attendees, and I want people to enjoy and get something out of my presentations. And so you read through the comments, and then there's always that one comment, right? And even if you have like, you read through like super high ratings, you're like, hey, great presentation, I learned so much. And then there's this one comment that says, complete waste of my time. Why did they put Anne on that stage? And I had to learn how to deal with those comments, because of course it is in the first moment, like you're like, oh my gosh, what did I do wrong? What that must be me, right? And I simply learned that that is not the case, because there will unfortunately always be haters. You will never please 100% of the people. And that is just something I have started to, I won't say ignore the comments, because I read through them very carefully, because if there is if there is something in them that I can learn from, I absolutely want to do that. But there are also some comments that I will ignore them.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you'll get things that could be constructive just amplified and magnified, obviously. And but yeah, I think you get out wherever you work, whoever you are, if you're a face of a company and you're delivering to thousands of people, there's always going to be trolls, unfortunately, and probably in Twitter as well, where Twitter trolls are prevalent.
Yes, they are.
Anyway, I think it's Andrew's interview question now. Yeah.
So normally I basically throw a question out there to like some of the guests at the end, depending on obviously the content we've had. Sometimes, I mean our last guest that we had on, she'd been interviewing for 2 months, so I didn't actually ask for an interview question. I think that's quite fair. I think she already experienced, a few too many of them. So I'm just going to ask you, if you wasn't at Microsoft, what would you be doing?
Oh my gosh, that's a good question. I have never thought about that. I think I would probably be traveling. Or have a job that allows me to travel, or is even focused on that, because I enjoy getting to know new cultures, getting to meet other people. I enjoy learning languages. I'm working on being trilingual, speaking German, Spanish, and English. And so that's probably what I would be doing.
Awesome. So yeah, well, I'm just going to say thank you for your time today. And it's been it's nice to hear someone with such passion about their job role, and just seeing it in your faces. Obviously, people listening won't be able to see that, but obviously from the YouTube video that people might watch, you can just see you just basically bleed Microsoft Teams.
Yes, no, absolutely. Thank you so much for your time. It's been a pleasure.
Well, that's now episode 11 of the Microsoft Spotlight podcast wrapped up. I'd like to say thank you for Anne and my co-host Andrew for today's episode, and I hope you guys enjoy it. Thanks.
See you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Microsoft Spotlight podcast. Please make sure you hit that like, share and subscribe button to help us promote our message. You can also follow us on Twitter at MSFT Spotlight, and we're also on LinkedIn, the Microsoft Spotlight podcast. And finally, we'd like to tell you a little bit about BitTitan and thank them for sponsoring this podcast.
Remote migrations start here. Let Migration Wiz do the work for you. It's fast, secure, and 100% SaaS, which means you can migrate at any time and from anywhere. Migrate mailboxes, documents, public folders, personal archives, or even Microsoft Teams with just a few clicks. No special training needed and no customer downtime. When the work matters, choose Migration Wiz.